What is happening, everyone? The football therapist here, ready to talk Dynasty rookie running back rankings. Let's hit that intro. So guys, as always, to me, the tiers are very important. I have my top 3 tiers right here. Naji Harris to me is in a tier of himself. I think it's because he's landed in the perfect situation for his style of running. He's going to be the workhorse there. He's going to get the touches. I am a little bit hesitant to say he'll be elite right off the bat. That offensive line still is really rough in Pittsburgh, but based on pure volume, I expect him to be a top 20 running back right off the bat. In their superflex formats, he's going to be going top 5, whether it's somewhere within the 3 to 4 range after the top 2 to 3 quarterbacks, or potentially if there's a quarterback run, the top 4 quarterbacks may go off the board. He may land at 5, but for me, he's a top 5 superflex pick pretty easily. Now, Etienne and Williams, these guys are in a tier by themselves for me. I think that outside of these 3 guys here, there's a big drop off in talent. Etienne, to me, talent wise, could be the most explosive running back in this class. He almost feels like Alvin Kamara to me. He's able to do it in the passing game. He's able to get it done on the ground between the tackles, but his situation is not really good in Jacksonville. I think that landing in a place like Jacksonville short term is kind of murky. They have James Robinson there. I'm not worried about Carlos Hyde. If you're worried about Carlos Hyde, you obviously haven't watched this guy get tossed around the league like a bag of chips being passed around a party. To me, he's just going to be there solely as a depth position. But obviously James Robinson is there. Both guys should get work, especially in year 1. But I still think long-term Travis Etienne has that first round draft capital invested in him. He'll be the guy in 2 to 3 years. I think he's not as safe as a Naji Harris in terms of landing spot. So that's why for me, he's a tier below Harris. But he should still comfortably fall into that 5 to 7 range, maybe 8, depending on if Kyle Pitts goes in your league very early. If it's a tight end premium league, he's kind of the wild card for a lot of leagues, but right now this kind of feels like the range where I'd want to grab Travis Etienne. And then Javonte Williams lands in Denver. Really good situation. Melvin Gordon is there, but he's on a 1-year contract. He's on the last year of his contract, so he has a potential starting path in year 2. I think obviously the big concern there is the quarterback situation, because if you don't have an effective quarterback, we've seen defenses be able to stack the box, make it difficult on these runners. The offensive line there isn't great, but it isn't horrific. So to me, Javonte Williams could be a really good fantasy asset, and in superflex formats, I'm willing to take him in the 6 to 9 range, because like we saw in the real NFL draft, I mean, Denver traded up to get him because there's this big tier drop off. And that next tier is Sermon to me. I think that Sermon is probably one of the last guys that we're really highly interested in that early 2nd round area. Because that draft capital, I mean, going in the 3rd round is always nice to see. But it doesn't make it a complete pick. It just boosts it a little. Once you get to that day 3 guys, the hit rate is really low, which is why a lot of these guys aren't I'm not very high on. I mean, if you're getting that 4th, 5th, 6th round draft capital, there's a reason why the NFL did not like the player. So Sermon, he lands in San Francisco. Great landing spot, long-term to me. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson both are on the final year of their deals. He potentially could carve a role this year and have a path to start next year. Great situation with Kyle Shanahan. The scheme always produces top-notch running backs. Trey Lance is there. That makes it really interesting to me because you add that dual quarterback in the backfield, and it opens up things for the running game a little bit more So Thurman is a guy in the early second round that I may be willing to take a shot at, especially if he can carve a role this season and potentially in the future. Because outside of that, I mean, looking at this next tier, Michael Carter, he landed in New York with the Jets. He has a really good path to starting, but he's a little bit on the smaller side. To me, there's not much draft capital invested in him in the 4th round. It could be like a guy like James Robinson, who may have a quality year, and then they go out and draft someone better than him next year. It just could happen. So while I think Michael Carter is worth a mid to late 2nd round pick, I'm being a little cautious on him. And the rest of these guys landed in spots where they're going to be in a committee or have some competition in front of them with a starting running back who's already been proven. Stevenson goes to New England. We know it's a crapshoot there. Kenny Gainwell lands in Philly. They already have Miles Sanders there, who's been a really good running back when healthy. Of course, he could carve a role as the 3rd round running back with no Boston Scott there, but his role will be limited, especially for the first few years, unless he really breaks out. His profile is pretty good, but he's a little bit on the smaller side. Tuba Hubbard, a guy who fell off this last year, lands in Carolina with the best fantasy running back in the game in Christian McCaffrey. So he doesn't really have a role there to start unless McCaffrey gets hurt, or down the line they don't re-sign McCaffrey, but that's 3-4 years down the line potentially, so I'm not really excited about him. Elijah Mitchell, he lands in San Francisco. I believe it was the 6th round that they drafted him. They already drafted Sermon. Of course, like I said, it's a quality landing spot, but a lot of competition. It's very difficult for those running backs in that day 3 window to find a role on their teams. But he has some appeal to him. His profile is pretty decent. And then Jovanian Hawkins landed with Atlanta, which is a really good situation. You only have Mike Davis there really to compete with. Of course, you'll be behind him, but if Hawkins can get some opportunity, he could be worth a late round pick in your dynasty drafts. But again, this whole tier, they have a ton of risk. They're not really exciting players, so I'm not really interested in investing a lot of draft capital in them. Like I said, most of these guys should go in the 3rd round, maybe the 4th of your rookie drafts. Carter, the lone exception, maybe he goes late 2nd because there's no real running back on the roster right now who is highly competitive, so he could get a starting role. But let me know what you think about these running backs and their situations below, and I'll see you guys next